Hi, hello, g'day, kia ora, welcome to the studio. I'm Paula from Moxy Mojo, and this is day 21 of Dephemerember 2023, your ephemera inspiration for December. Thank you for joining me for today's prompts. Feel free to craft along, or sit back and enjoy watching my take on the prompts from Louisa and Barbara. So today's prompts is vintage meets modern. Now, to be honest, this is pretty much my style when it comes to junk journals, even scrapbooking, I'd have to say. I can never really get into a purely vintage style journal because I like colour too much. And so I tend to do kind of a mix of the two most of the time, where I'll have a lot of vintage elements, but it'll also include a lot of modern elements. And along the way, I've learnt sort of probably 3 key things to helping the two styles kind of mesh together. So hopefully I can share those with you in today's video. So we're going to start off with a base of cardstock. So I've cut one piece and it's white textured cardstock. So one I've left at the full height, which is just near enough to 8 1/4 inches. So this was like a standard A4 here in New Zealand, but I've trimmed it down to 10 1/2 inches wide. So I just took a little bit off the end. The second piece I also left at 8 1/4 high, but I trimmed that down to 11 1/2. So I only took about 1/4 inch off that one. So we've got these two pieces, and we're going to eventually, or according to my plan, is combine these effectively into one long piece. But we can't get paper that long here, so it's going to have like a hidden join in there. So the first kind of thing that I think of when I am going to do something that's sort of more modern rather than vintage is look at what photos I'm going to be including, if I'm going to include photos. And for this particular creation, I am including a photo. Now I'm using one from Kiss Kiss Kit, and that's by Susan Taylor Brown from her Etsy shop Poppiness. And this was one of the kits that I got from Susan, which I absolutely love. Now I printed it out in colour, and I got the sepia tone for the photo, which looks really quite vintage. So I then printed it out in monochrome or grayscale, and I got a completely different look. The photo is exactly the same, but the looks are quite a bit different. So if you take this one away, even though it's a vintage style photograph, having it in the black and white rather than the sepia makes it look a lot more modern. So there's your first thing, is if you're wanting to do or have a more modern look, consider how you print your photograph. A colour photograph compared to a black and white or a sepia would look more modern than either of those, but where it's a sepia photo, if you print it out in black and white or grayscale or monochrome, depending on sort of what your printing settings are there, it does look more modern than the original. So we're going to use this, and this has kind of determined our size and our heights on everything here. So the next thing I am looking at is that if I was doing this as a vintage style, I would have my backgrounds, and that's what this is going to be, in a neutral tone, not a white. I'd probably go for something that was more cream, toned down, had a little hint of the beige or the brown in it. Looking at your antique linens, your tea dyes, I would probably use like aged book pages, that sort of thing, to tone down the stark whiteness, because that would blend and would harmonise with the vintage photo. But because I'm using a black and white photo, I'm going to add a bit of colour. And the more sort of modern the colour is that you use, then the less vintage this is all going to look. So for my colour scheme, because my journal has the main colour scheme going through it is sort of teal and brown, those are the colours that I'm actually going to work with. But I may end up putting something else in depending on what I feel it needs. So we are going to colour these two sheets. Now I'm going to work with them sideways just because they fit on my craft sheet this way. They don't fit round in landscape. And I want to work on them together so that I'm getting sort of the same colour tone throughout, because I do want it to look like essentially one continuous sheet of paper. Or at least that's what I'm hoping to do. So I'm going to be using the textured side out. So this is more bumpy. The other side is quite smooth. So I want that texture because that's going to impact also on how the colours work together. The rest of it is essentially going to be, this is going to be the inside that we're not going to see. So textured side out on both of them. Now I've got out a selection of my Lindy's mists. I will run through them now. I'm not sure if I'm going to use them all or not, but this is what I've got out. So I've got Lindy's Starburst in Shabby Turbine Teal, Lindy's Starburst in Time Travel Teal, Lindy's Starburst in Tibetan Poppy Teal, I've got Lindy's Starburst in Steampunk Sepia, Lindy's Starburst in Mission Bells Brown, Lindy's Starburst Cattail Copper Brown, and that one I'm not sure about because I think that might have sort of a reddy kind of base to it. We've got Lindy's Starburst Cadbury Milk Chocolate and Lindy's Starburst Dark Chocolate Truffle. So the only one I'll kind of put aside for now is that reddy one because I'm not sure about that. I also have some water here in my spray bottle, and I've got some other colours around. I'm not sure if I'll use my eyes inks as well. I'll see about those, and I've also got like some gold. So I've got the eyes ink in gold, but I've also got my Chinese calligraphy ink in gold, which we may add some on towards the end just to sort of add a bit of interest there. But for now, as usual, I'm just going to have a play. If you're not familiar with my work and the way I colour things, I do tend to try to create like this watermark kind of look, because that's what I like. So you will quite often see me drying in order to get something like that. So I'm just sort of letting you know to expect that in a lot of my work. Okay, I'm really pleased with that. They are both dry, like 98% I'd say, dry easily. They are pretty much smothered in colour. Okay, so these are really dry now. They are curling up a wee bit on the corners, but that'll soon straighten out with just a little bit of reshaping. So I'm pleased with that. I love the colour, and I love what the browns and golds have done in terms of interrupting or influencing the teal colour in behind. Some of it looks almost kind of green, which is quite surprising. But yeah, I like it. It's perfect for what we want. And I love this bit here where it's kind of formed like a river almost down there. So yeah, definitely what I want. So now we are going to do some trimming and, no, not trimming, but scoring and stuff. So I've worked out some measurements for what I need. So we will get these scored. I've had to adjust them because of this part here and having to join them together, but that is perfectly fine. So we'll just go with it and see where we end up. So we'll start with the long one here. So I've got my scoreboard. Now what we're making, and I should probably explain that before I go any further, is we're doing an update on like a cabinet card. So a cabinet card is a very traditional, very vintage style of project where you have like an oval or a rectangle, yeah, generally ovals, most of them that I've seen, and it's like a pocket and you tuck a photo into there, and then there's normally printing on the back of who the photographer is. So we're kind of doing something like that, but we're taking it up a notch, as I tend to do. So what we're going to do is we're lining up along the long side and along the side here, and we are, so this is our 11.5 inch piece lined up along the side here. So we're doing our first score line at 5.5. And I'm just going to go down a couple of times to make sure that that is well and truly scored. So happy with that. I'm then going to flip it over. And you can see there's that white. Doesn't it look so different? Wow. Major difference. So we've done 5.5. And now I want to do at 11. So 5.5 and 5.5 is 11. So we're going to do a 1/2 inch here, the other way. So that's all we need to do on this one. On this one, we are going to do, so we're lining it up against that side again, lining it up against this side. We're going to do a 1/2 inch. Which is always the most difficult one to do. Then we're going to do 4 3/4. So we've got 1/2. So 4.5 is 4, and then the 3/4 takes us to 5 1/4. So then we're going to turn it over. So that's at 5 1/4. So we now need to do another 4 3/4. So that will take us to 10 inches. And that will leave us with half an inch on the end. From 8 1/4. So at 7 3/4. We are now going to do across the bottom. And we're actually going to trim part of that off. And so because we've done that, we need to do this as well. So we line this up on the side and there. So we're doing this at 7 3/4 as well. What I'm going to do is for my side seam or my bottom seam, I'm going to trim on a slight angle up to there, and then another slight angle, and a slight angle here up to that score line. And then I'm going to take off the score line, and I'm going along the upper edge of the score line. That's where I'm cutting. Now, before we do any gluing, so it's going to go this way. So on these two here, I want to do a 1/2 circle finger pull so that we know that it's a pocket. I am going to take my little wee circle, this is a 1 inch circle punch, and I'm going to hope that it's going to cut nicely because it has a tendency not to. And lining up the center of the punch and chop, and thank you very much for cooperating. Same on here, so lining up the center of the punch and a squeeze, and we got 2 semicircles there. So that is all we need for that. What we are going to do is fold in here and we are making sure that this lines up on this side, which is kind of awkward for me as a righty. Here we are going to fold backwards, and then because this one here is going to join onto here, so that we end up with a double layer, and I've intentionally made it about 3/4 of an inch shorter here so that you can see it's a double layer. Right, let's just try Peacock Feathers ink. Now that needs to go into there, that needs to sit there, right, and that's going to glue there. So on the outside it looks like it's just green there, and then you open it up and you realise that, oh, it's actually just a pocket, and then we've got the back there. We are going to put our black and white photo on the front. Now I could put the sienna one or the colour one, because like there's the brown tones there, so it would still look alright, but just with the colouring, that bright intense green or teal, I like the black and white one. So we're going to bring it so that it's got roughly an even frame around the side, top and side, but on the bottom we've got a larger gap, kind of like what like a Polaroid has, and that's kind of another modern type influence there as well. So I'm just going to put glue completely on the back of this. Now we need to put it into our journal. Was looking at this page here, because it can back onto there and can open up, and it goes really nicely with this green there and the well, greeny teal aqua, same thing. Right, now in order to attach this, I have got a little bit, so I might have to use a combination of green faux sellotape, or you know, faux vintage tape, and I've got some brown on another sheet. It looks like that, but I quite like the idea of using the teal, but it looks like I've just about used up what I've got, but that's okay, we can still use it. So I'm going to have to trim this down. Right, so put you off to one side. Now, my problem is that this is just so bulky. Right, I can take you out for a start. Don't need you in there. And if I flip everything over, then we can get to this page. So I'm going to attach this as I would a flip out. So I'm going to put this right up the top of here. Then I'm going to get the other bit. Most people only seem to do brown and yellow faux vintage tape, which I don't see why you can't do whatever colour of alcohol ink you've got. So if you've got teals and blues or pinks and reds, then make faux vintage tape in those colours, because if you've got it, you will use it. Right, now this is just going to be a wee bit tricky because I need to tuck this underneath my belly band. Actually sticking my belly band down. Might just put a little bit of glue on here just to be sure that the tape is going to stick. That is our modern take on a vintage cabinet card, and then what we can do is actually make some tags to go in there. Or I just thought I really want to make something to go into the pockets of my cabinet card. So I have coloured this piece of scrap cardstock. It was white, so it's exactly the same as the one I used for the pockets. I've used exactly the same colours, but this time I've emphasised the brown tones rather than the teal. You will still see sort of them coming through both from underneath and the few spots of colour, but I wanted it to look more vintage for this. Because this is a magnetic or a metal, there's metal inside it, that will hold it down. Why didn't I think of this earlier? Because these magnets are a nightmare, that's why. Alright. Okay, so now we're going to have to shift these around. So where is our 3? There is our 3. So if we go just inside that, we should be okay. There's our 3 there. Right, so let's try that again. One. Okay, so we'll pull you out. And yep, these are massive big circles. I know this. I'm okay with this. Now I have cut 2 pieces of cardstock, 4.5 by 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.25, and 5.25 by 7.25. So they're the same height, different widths. First thing I am going to do is, I think, walnut stain. Actually, no, before we do that, I've been doing a quarter a lot lately, so 3/8 for the win. Now what we need to do is ink around the edges of this, and I'll start with this ink and then decide if I need to go. No, that one looks okay. I wondered if I needed to go to Gran Espresso because I didn't think this one would be dark enough, but no, this one is perfectly fine. Right, so what I'm going to do is I will stick this onto here, and so I'll cover that one corner and then put the other one onto it. So just using my art glitter glue. There. I'm just going to glue the whole thing. Right, like it. I like it a lot. Okay, so these are our tags after I've added photos. These were also in the kit from Susan Taylor Brown. This is the Kiss Kiss kit. So now we will just put them into their new home. So we've got, now this one will go this way. And this one will go this way. And you'll see why in a minute. Because that way we have our two tabs sticking up so you can see them. So I hope you enjoyed my take on vintage meets modern. I really love the way this has turned out. I love that there's all this extra real estate, so I can still put something in here. I've got, you know, the second side of each of the cards. It's got its vintage touches, but I love that it's still my modern aesthetics. This to me is me in a nutshell. So even if you're more of a vintage style or more of a modern style, I hope you're going to try this kind of melding of or meshing of styles and give it a go for yourself. So be sure to tag me if you try something like this. Hashtag Moxy Mojo, all one word, and I will be sure to keep an eye out for you. So I will see you back in the studio for the next prompt. Bye for now.